Thank you so much, you guys, for joining me today and for agreeing to talk to me about the mythical thing that is 3D. Would you guys be able to introduce yourselves for me? Could you tell me like who you are, a little bit about what you do? Yeah, perfect.
My name is Stef, or CynicalPlant on Twitter. I'm currently a 3D artist at a video game company called Glowmade, based around Guildford. I specialize in characters, but kind of model everything. Yeah.
Ah, awesome. Thank you. I have so many questions about that, but this is all game industry stuff that I will get into at some point. Jack, how about you?
Hello. Yeah, I'm Jack, obviously. I'm a senior environment artist at Splash Damage. I guess I've been doing the games industry for about 5 years. Yeah, I like Pokemon, D&D, and 3D art. Those are my 3 pillars of life.
A good 3 pillars. Very good. Wait, who's your favorite Pokemon?
Favorite Pokemon is a big question.
Okay, never mind. On to Spencer.
Hi, my name is Spencer. I'm a visual effects artist and video editor living in Bristol, in the United Kingdom.
Woohoo! Thanks so much for joining me today and also for introducing yourself. Oh my god, Can you guys tell that I'm very tired and just had to do a very fast stream setup right before this? Okay, so could you maybe tell me a little bit about how you got into doing 3D? Like what started you out on this path? Like, I know for me as like a cat 2D artist / motion graphics editor, I rocked up at like age 12 on the internet and was like, cool, these cats are murdering each other, it's time to make a career out of this. So could you maybe kick us off with like your origin story into 3D hell?
I actually started out wanting to be an animator. I did a lot of 2D work. I liked animation, but at the time 2D animation was kind of like, I guess, falling out of popularity, as in there were a lot less jobs for that. So I figured, hey, maybe 3D animation would be a better route for that. And then I went to university, and turns out I hate animation. I do not enjoy it at all.
I think I'm the opposite. I went to university and realized I hate 3D.
Fortunately, first year they had us doing like loads of different stuff. So in doing that, I realized that I really enjoyed making 3D art and sculpting. So I just ended up focusing on that instead and never stopped.
No, it was you're a brave soul. I'm very well done.
I was maybe a foolish path, but it worked out.
Yeah, Jack, how about you? I'm afraid I'll already know all this, but maybe you'll surprise me.
Maybe. I don't. Well, I remember the first time I started doing stuff that was 3D. I was at uni. I ended up making a 3D chameleon that played the ukulele, and I basically learned 3D art just to kind of put that video together. And then I just stopped for about 4 years, and then I picked it back up after several years off, just because I was working on a different job, and that I ended up having to assemble background designs for when I was working in animation. Hilariously, apparently animation connects us here, and I just found out that I loved it, and I just decided to retrain. So I just found it very, very satisfying. There's something so satisfying about being able to turn a model around. I think the final part of any 3D art is to sit there for several hours and just look at what you've made and spin it around.
Yes, I can't talk about that. That's NDA. But no, I have done that to your models.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Spencer, how about you?
So, there was this bastard I know in high school. Sorry, can we swear?
Yeah, why not? Life's short.
All right. There's this absolute bastard that I knew in high school called Ryan, and oh man, we are probably some of the closest of friends. I think if there's any guy that I could see myself getting settled down and married to, living in a log cabin, just being platonic hetero BFFs for life, but married, that's important. It would be this guy. And we go in and out of touch because we have very busy and fairly incompatible time zones. And a little while ago, when we got back into touch, he mentioned that he was learning Blender, and he was showing me all the cool stuff that he did in it. And I wanted a way to be closer to my lovely bastard husband. So I decided to start learning some Blender as well, so that we could have that to talk about a little bit. And I realized how useful it was for my main job of, working in visual effects and doing compositing and editing and stuff. So ever since then, I've just kind of been learning and fiddling around with it a lot more. It's been fun.
Ah, awesome! I can't believe your origin story is like the power of friendship.
I mean, he is my greatest friend and possibly also my greatest enemy. I love him dearly.
Perfect. Okay, well, I sort of suppose that kind of answers my second question. But would you guys say that, like, did you take like the kind of conventional route into 3D? Did you go to university, college for it to study, or are you more like self-made 3D artists ready to take on the world?
I feel like there's a mix of both in there, because I went to university, but as far as learning went, they didn't really teach us small specifics. I always really appreciated the deadlines, though, because it forced me to learn things that I probably would avoid learning if I was doing it in my spare time. So forcing me to learn, it was good. But it didn't teach me everything I know.
Okay. So what would you say was, like, where did the learning really begin for you then?
I guess just being forced to do things, but that's it's different for different people. That works very well with me, where if I'm like given something to do, I'm like, okay, well now I have to do it, and I get really like motivated to do it because I want to make something good and I guess get a high grade or whatever. So that works, and that doesn't work for everyone. So it's about finding what works for you and taking that path. So
once you got taught like a little bit, you dabbled in university is what you're saying, I think. What was the next step for you into making a career out of working in 3D?
I ended up just doing it all the time. It became a hobby as well. And like just every minute I was like, oh, I'm gonna model something. Yeah. Just doing it all the time.
Living that life.
Yeah.
No, perfect. Thank you. Jack, how about you? I'm ready for this answer. I've never been more ready.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, I definitely didn't have a conventional route. I have a degree in marine biology. It was something I did at uni, and I kind of realized after my first year that it wasn't really what I wanted to do. But I had already paid for a year of university, and I didn't want to just have all of that debt for no reason. So I finished my degree, and then I ended up working in sort of just bars and coffee shops for the next like 3 or so years, while I trained myself to be a storyboard artist. So I ended up working as a freelance storyboard artist and illustrator, and I was doing pretty well with that. I ended up doing loads of things, like some stuff for like car commercials and Sky and bits random stuff, basically just loads of ads. One little short movie, and then obviously I ended up working on this one thing where I was making backgrounds, and I decided to try and get into 3D art as well. I just self-taught myself everything. Yeah, I never did any formal training in kind of any of the art disciplines I've done, and I think that's been an advantage in terms of I'm quite generalist. I can kind of turn my hand to anything, but it was definitely the longer route. It's whatever works for people. I ended up just, it was my evenings were learning to do 3D art, and then I ended up working as an outsourcer for free, basically, for a little while, and then I was working because I just wanted to have some professional briefs, because I was sort of, well, I'm spending my time doing this anyway, so I may as well get some like professional feedback, and that was cool. And then I got paid for it. I wouldn't recommend anybody work for free. I think it's not a great thing. I think anyone that tells you you're going to get exposure from it is lying. Then I ended up getting a studio role, and that's where I've just been ever since.
Yeah, you have, Jackmudge.
The irony was I left marine biology behind. I was like, I'm going to be finished with marine biology, and I ended up interning at an animation studio making backgrounds for them, and it was for an animation about rock pools. So I couldn't avoid it. And honestly, marine biology has been following me like a shadow my entire career.
Yeah. But it is pretty funny, and I also quite like winding you up about it and asking for weird shark facts.
So yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how many of them would be true nowadays. I might be wrong about.
Oh no! Okay, outdated shark fact.
Yeah.
Can you give us an outdated shark fact right now, please?
Most of a shark's body is its liver, and it controls its buoyancy with that.
That's
like
yeah, because it doesn't have a swim bladder. Oh my god! Wait. Oh, I knew that about rays. I didn't know that about sharks. It's super cool, actually.
I think they rapidly convert molecules into fats, and because fats are buoyant, it makes them go up, and then they can sort of metabolize them as well.
What?
Really rapidly.
What?
Yeah.
That's the wildest thing I've ever heard.
Tell you what else is good. Another marine biology fact. This is what my degree was. Basically, I've got loads of cool facts about sea life. They found some killer whales have names. They found there were specific whale calls that they were finding that was being used to communicate with other whales. So I was like, oh.
I love it.
Oh,
That's
that's really
incredible.
sweet, and also alarming because one day they may take over and control us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Embrace that
you'll
reality.
build a better world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you make a valid point. It may well be a better world. Spencer, I guess this answer isn't quite like, I think we've sort of already covered yours, but I guess for me it would be like, so you mentioned getting into Blender, like how that's a brave move.
I did go to university to study video editing, and the most valuable thing I got out of that was a visa to live in the United Kingdom. And from that point, I gained an interest in doing VFX and weird VFX. And when you're doing visual effects, a lot of it can be done in 2D, which is generally what I did. I find that 2D work in general is just kind of another version of 3D. It's just that, the third dimension is a different one. It's time, as opposed to, Z. So going from 2D visual effects and like weird rotoscoping things out of shots or compositing different assets on top of each other to actually working with real 3D stuff and making models and trying to put those into scenes is definitely a big leap. And it's one that takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of time to get into. But also with programs like Blender that are so good at being just all around, something. Blender isn't excellent at any one thing in 3D, but it is good at a whole lot of things, and it is free, and it is one of the most like heavily documented 3D things I've ever seen in my life. Like there are more Blender tutorials on the internet than there are for like After Effects at this point. I'm pretty sure it's ridiculous how much people are using Blender and talking about Blender and sharing their quick tips. And so the time that it takes to make something that is, I don't know, worth putting into a short film or into a commercial is shockingly low. Like you can go from not knowing anything about Blender to doing something really cool within just like a couple of weeks.
Okay, so thank you everyone. My question will probably be, could you maybe walk through with me what your normal working day would look like? Just because I think I've done a lot of panels recently with people about working in, a lot of it's been like animation, but it's mostly in the 2D realm. And I think obviously a lot of the people watching this video might be a bit younger, and I kind of think it would be important to sort of demystify the work process a little bit. I think a lot of people don't know what these jobs entail, or I think people might not even know that they exist. Like Jack, I think your job is one that I would not have known the name for prior to working in the games industry. Stef, yours is another one that I think people would apply and they go to university assuming that their job will be to be 3D. and that'll be like the entire pipeline, when really it's sort of a lot of different moving parts to make one thing. So yeah, if you would be able to walk me through like what is your normal day and how does that work?
Oh, so pre-pandemic or post-pandemic?
We'll go.
Oh, current. They don't differ that much.
They don't. I imagine. Yeah, it might be a little bit like the rest of us, where it's like I will roll out of bed 10 minutes before work, and then I will
absolutely
make a cup of tea, and then be in my dressing gown and sleepily boot up the PC.
Yeah, that's definitely the way it goes right now. We usually have like a little meeting in the morning where we just see each other's face, so we're not like weirdly distant from each other. Because we've actually had quite a few people join during the working from home period, so there's some people I haven't met in person yet.
Oh no, we're the same. I think we've grown quite a lot as a studio, and now there's a bunch of people that you're like, would never met you, but I would die for you.
It's weird in that regard. So we have like a little morning catch up, and then we break off into smaller meetings where we talk about what we did the day before and what our plans are for the rest of the day to make sure we're on track with whatever tasks we have. And then we kind of just break away and go off and do whatever we're expected to do. With my job, it varies. Sometimes I will just get given a concept and they're like, hey, go model this. I'll model it up, checking with my art lead if it's going in the right direction, if it's adhering to the style. But sometimes I'm left to concept it myself as well.
Okay.
Because we're not like a massive studio, I've kind of taken on lots of different roles all the time through its growth. Like when I started there were only like maybe 6 of us.
Okay.
We're about 25 now, I think.
Ooh.
So lots of growth. But back then I was even doing like rigging things. So
sorry, wait, was that 6 like staff members?
Yeah, 6 people.
6 people.
6
oh my
people.
God. Oh, well, congratulations, Glome. You've grown so much.
We have. But yeah, so like in those smaller studios, you kind of expect it, and it's preferred for you to have more generalist skills where you can fill more than one role. But now there's loads of people, so I don't have to do so many things anymore, and I've just really been focusing on characters. So that's been nice.
Ah, no, lovely. Okay, all right. So, what happens when you think you're done then? So, I'm assuming you send it off for review and stuff, but like, what would you say is the next step in the process?
So when I've finished like my sculpt or the high poly, I make sure it's what they want artistically, and then once I get the go-ahead, I'll retopologize it, optimize it, ready to pass off to the riggers, who I usually have a little bit back and forth with them over topology to make sure it's what they want, it's going to deform properly for the animation. And then I kind of just, once that's all approved, I send it off to them, and the next time I see it, it's probably in game. Or it's been scrapped. That can happen.
Oh, but... no. But I bet that's pretty cool, though. Just be like seeing stuff that you've made being a thing. You're like, oh, my son.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, I get so attached to them, and then like I have to watch someone kill them in the playthrough, and I'm like, why? Why have you done this?
No, that's really good. All right, Jack. How about you?
Hello. Yeah, I mean, like a normal day depends on the size of the project, I find. There is always one consistent thing, which is we tend to have stand-ups every morning. So you'll come into work and you'll say all your hellos, and then you'll all stand in a circle with like your tea or coffee and tell everyone what you're gonna do. And you're like, you do that thing when you don't really know when someone's finished speaking. Yeah. Well, that's definitely worse during the pandemic because you're doing it on calls. But yeah, I quite enjoy stand-ups. They're a nice, pleasant thing. You get to see all of your teammates, which is all good. Unlike a smaller team, then you'll probably I end up just sort of working because we at Splash anyway. We tend to plan things in advance, so we know what we're going to be working on every day, usually for the next couple of weeks. So we just kind of say what we're doing, if anything's going to stop us from achieving that, and we just check in every now and then with our leads just to make sure that we're on track. And that's kind of how it goes. yeah, and then at the end of the day, like nowadays, now that we're working from home, we do a little check-in at the end of the day just to see how everyone is and see if anything's come up, because we're not sat next to each other. And you might do that on a big team as well. Like if I was on a team of 14 plus environment artists, might do a little more frequent check-ins just to make sure everyone's okay. But you'd also be split up into little groups and something. Yeah, essentially stand-ups. They do some work, have meetings, probably 300 or 400 cups of tea in between all of those, and yeah, that's it.
Okay. Would you maybe be able to? Because I feel like 3D modeling might be a little bit like easier as a concept to understand, but what actually? To someone who's never heard of it before, what is it that you actually do as like the nitty-gritty of environment art?
You can think of environment artists as set designers, but for games.
Okay.
Although there's a similar role in the VFX industry as well, but you are essentially a set designer. You will make objects, again, depending on the size of the project. If you're working on a huge AAA title, you'll generally be working with an outsourcing studio, and they'll give you all of the 3D art to use, and you just have to kind of compose it. But yeah, environment art is set design for games. So anything, so you need to make a level in a restaurant, then it's my job to make all the floors, the ceilings, the lights, the bowls, the bars, the seats, tables, and make it all look believable and making sure it fits with the style of the game. And that's what environment art does.
Okay.
I love it. So, it's extremely varied.
So if someone gave you like, oh sorry, what is your joke?
Well, we have a joke where we kind of say, like, how do you define environment art? You kind of just say, well, everything else. You have character art, you have weapon art, vehicle artists, hard surface modelers, and kind of environment art. They do everything else.
Everything else.
All the other bits.
So, what would your average brief kind of be like, without giving away NDA project secrets? What sort of stuff would end up on your table then?
A mood painting, maybe some more detailed concept art, and a deadline, and that would probably be kind of it. They'll probably just say, like, we need to have this made. It's for this. It needs to sit these criteria. And yeah, you just kind of have to go for it. Because environment art, it takes ages. Like, we'll be working on one section of a map for months. It's hard to break it down or make it any more granular than that. Just kind of, yeah, just kind of, you have to sort of pre-plan all of your stuff. And then what you do is, especially if you had a concept, you probably draw on it to try and figure out what elements in that drawing repeat. Because you don't want to have to model everything individually, because it will take forever. Yeah, we work in a really modular way in environment art. You'll notice there's probably in some games you maybe make one or two of a type of tree, and you just duplicate them around with different scales and different rotations, and no one ever notices.
Well, this is probably why people who play things like Animal Crossing and go, why are there only 4 types of trees? And they're like, this is why there's 4 types of trees.
Yeah, it's usually time. There's all sorts of really boring technical reasons as well. I will absolutely not go into those.
No,
at the risk of making everyone fall asleep.
If this is an introductory level, yes.
And to be honest, like anyone that's getting into the games industry, especially, you don't really need to worry about it too much. We just need to. You just want to see that you can model. To a good standard, essentially. All of the optimization stuff, we teach all of that on the job, and it depends on the project. It changes constantly. So, yeah, that's something I would say to any new 3D artists. You see quite a lot of focus from people on optimization straight off, but it varies a lot depending on what you're working on. And we can always teach it on the job. So,
okay.
Just make pretty things.
Make pretty things. Yeah. And lastly, Spencer, I guess. How about you?
So I'm an extremely recent graduate, and most of the work that I do is either for myself or my portfolio. Most of the work in the film industry is brought to you by connections, and as somebody living in a foreign country, the only real connections I have are my university friends, and only really one of them made it big or famous in the time since we've graduated, so I'm a little slack in that regard. Most of my days depend on what I'm doing. Sometimes I'm editing a video or a podcast or modeling or compositing or making music or drawing or updating my web presence or whatever, because you do have to be a generalist in a lot of cases. It's like what CynicalPlant said earlier. Stef. It's like what Stef said earlier. But when I'll simplify it down to the 3D stuff for the sake of this. Whenever I have a day that I'm doing 3D, I slither out of bed and onto the computer downstairs. The computer has to be downstairs because if it's in my room, I'm never going to be able to separate my work and my life, which is an important thing for everybody to do.
That's the dream. I wish I had more rooms.
It's in the living room, so technically I am appropriating everybody else in the house's space by using it, but also nobody here is a cop, so I think I'm good. So what generally what I do is, I open up Blender and I see what do I have to do today. Actually, recently I've been working on a project where every week I'll make a new overlay for a live stream. So for the recent one, I spent the first part of the day looking at pictures of old boats and trying to make an old boat out of a cube. And that just kind of, that just kind of factored into looking at the cube and extruding it, making it longer in some places, curving it upwards, adding more places to interact with the cube and all that kind of stuff until eventually I got it into the shape of an old boat. And then once that was done, I took another cube and I turned it into an ocean using a button that says turn this into an ocean because Blender is amazing. And from that point, I went around and rocked it and changed its location accordingly to make it look a little bit like the boat was moving on the ocean. And then I added in some clouds, which I made following a tutorial about how to make clouds.
Thank you, tutorial man.
Honestly, again, Blender has so many tutorials. It's incredible. You can do literally anything in this program and you can do literally most things in this program. I will say there are some things that still continue to vex me, but I think it's just because I'm stupid. So I'm not going to fault the tutorial men. But yeah, I add in clouds and then I add in a circle and I make it tiny because I want to have an island, and I put the circle close to the camera so that it looks like it's not a circle. It looks like it's, I don't know, a thing of land. And from there I put a cylinder and I make that taller and kind of squish it into the shape of a tree. And that's just kind of it. You're playing with shapes until you get something that looks a little bit like how you want to look at it. And you can do a lot more advanced stuff. From that point, usually I'll get into texturing and I'll, download pictures off of the internet and I'll run them through a whole bunch of image editors to make it look just how I want it. And then I'll set it up so that it looks just right on this piece of geometry. And then I'll, go do something else. But for the most part, at the very least, when you're not doing character-based animation or something like that, you don't really have to be that particular about how you model things and how you model them correctly so that it will animate properly. Because for the most part, at least in Blender, if you're just going to be, moving the ship as a whole, you don't have to worry about, rigging up the sails properly or anything like that. So yeah, that eventually I do that until it becomes dark, which is usually around 3 p.m. these days.
Yep.
And then I go into the kitchen and I make myself some chicken and rice. And
perfect.
Yeah, that's my day.
All right, thank you. I feel like I've been painted a picture of your day. All right, okay. So 3D can be a little bit, I think there are probably, obviously we've talked a lot about how Blender has a lot of tutorials, but I think if you are a young artist or someone just starting out, it can be a little bit inaccessible because they'll talk about a lot of industry standard stuff and they'll say, oh, well, you need Maya, you need 3ds Max, and these are very expensive softwares and also have so many buttons. So I think, what would be your beginner's guide to, I would like to learn how to do 3D? Where should you start? Do you have any tutorials? Do you have any particular software in mind? And even just tips on things to focus on. I think people can talk a lot about in artwork, like the golden ratio and 2 and 3 point perspective when it comes to drawing, but what are the 3D equivalents of that when learning?
This is gonna be a hard one.
There's a big question.
Because, like, I mean, yeah, Blender's free. I guess I would recommend that if you want to get started in programs, but also I really don't like Blender. But I've been working in other 3D programs for so long, whenever I go into Blender, I have to Google how to move the camera around, and it makes me feel stupid. I hate that. But it's free, it's great.
So aside from like software, where should you start? So you've opened up Blender and you're staring at it blankly. I guess what would be your beginner's guide?
Oh man, there's so many buttons, like it's been said before. There's just so much, and even in Maya, there's so much. But even now, after working in it for years, I think I still only use like a small fraction of the program. Half of it I don't ever have to touch. So following tutorials of things that you want to make similarly, like I want to make a character, follow a tutorial where a simple character is made, follow it step by step, and just learn what you need to make that rather than overwhelming yourself with learning everything at once is a big help.
Yeah, I agree. Well, no, because when I started learning, they barely taught us how to extrude polygons, right?
No.
And then they were like, okay, now we're going to do particle simulation.
Bouncing back and forth like that, that's just gonna fry your brain.
And there was no like logical, like step-by-step route. So I think, because obviously I think what people really want to do is when they boot up this stuff is they want to make a thing, and then they want to make it look a certain way, and then maybe they want to make it walk across a screen and be lit. Yeah, if that makes sense.
It's definitely one step at a time. I think the first 3D model I made was a desk. So, I mean, that doesn't move at all. It's a bunch of boxes. And still, I managed to make it look terrible. So, start off simple.
Yeah.
Get the ropes.
It's I think no one will deny it's like a steep learning curve, because it's not something...
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think the... transfer of skills from drawing on pen and paper to then sitting in front of a tablet in Photoshop, at least it's not the logical leap of you draw a line and the line appears in the software, whereas in a 3D space you click a button and you draw a cube in a 3D space, but a certain amount, and then you have to apply polygons to it. And yeah, you know, the more I talk about this, the more I think we might be deterring people from 3D. How? Yeah, yeah. How can we get people into 3D? All right. I guess, Jack, you have taught yourself. So could you tell me how you did this?
Yeah, I was working at a company that had copies of Maya, and I just practiced after work. In there, which was it was like an animation studio, so it was pretty useful. Blender is a really good tool, and there's a whole like thing in 3D art. People are like, oh, Max is the best. No, Maya is the best. No, Blender is the best. But they're all just tools, and they're all terrible in their own way. But we kind of love them. Yeah, I didn't realize that I was getting rid of their educational licenses. I've seen people, I've heard of people recently getting them, so I don't know when that's going to go. And I just checked their website. You can still currently get them.
Okay.
The only thing you need to do is you need to be part of it's called a qualified educational institution is what they call it, which basically means you need to be a middle school or high school, or like a junior college or a university or a technical school. Or if you're part of a homeschool program that's got official recognition, I think you can also get an educational license. And that'll last for a year, and then it will disappear forever. But I guess it's one of those things where going to university to study this kind of thing would be super valuable if you wanted to get access. The only thing is I've not seen Blender integrated into any AAA pipelines yet. So if you were really passionate about getting into AAA development, uni is probably a really good place to start, because you'll have access to all the software that you need, and you won't have to pay any more than the extortionate amount that you have to pay for university anyway. But Blender is a brilliant tool, and like the concepts that you'll learn in Blender will be exactly the same across all of the packages. If I was going to think about something like 3D art fundamentals, like you said, like, you know, with like two-point perspective, if you were drawing and stuff, I would say learning just how to model things would be a great thing. Box modeling is a really great place to start. I've been doing this for a little while now, and I still box model basically every single thing that I make.
Okay, so could you, if you had no idea what a box model was, like if you were, imagine you were me and you had absolutely no idea what a box model is.
So you get a box and you cut it. You put what's called an edge loop in it.
Okay.
And then you can extrude a face, and then if you just, which means you take one face and you make it bigger. So if you end up with a box and it's cut in half, you just select one half of it and then drag that out, and then you've got like an L shape. And box modeling is you just keep doing that until there's so many bits that have been pulled around that it looks like it to look like. Box modeling is a really great way to get started. If you YouTube it, like box modeling tutorials, you'll find a bunch of them. You'll end up with loads of people like to say things like, oh, you need to learn NURBS modeling and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't mean, I don't know what that means even now. I
am a senior and I don't know what that means.
Like I get the concept of it, but I have maybe in my time working professionally done it twice, 3 times. It's a cool thing. I guess maybe if you're using 3ds Max, it's more useful, but I don't really. That's too complicated for this. But Blender's great. At the moment, you can still get your student license of Maya. Then, yeah, I guess just learning, going from one thing to just start small and just keep going. Learn to make a box, which is harder than it sounds. Then just go from there. 3D art is a steep learning curve. It's hard at first, but when you get really used to it, you get in the flow. It becomes so satisfying. It becomes so second nature, and honestly, really fun.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And I suppose, Spencer, you are probably closest to this as someone who has recently self-taught yourself Blender. What would you say is, aside from like Googling how to start, where would you recommend people begin? So it's day one, they've hit the download and install button. Like, where should they go from there?
If you do want a very basic understanding about how 3D tools work, I am going to echo the others and say Blender is fantastic. Andrew Price, also known as the Blender Guru, has a fairly famous tutorial series about how to make a donut and a pot of coffee. And in doing so, he very efficiently teaches you about just about every basic core concept required to learn Blender. He talks to you about how modeling works and a little bit about how particle systems work and how to simulate fluid and different kinds of materials, and how light scatters and goes all around. And like all of that is just from like a really nice series, well put together, efficiently taught series about how to model a donut. And it's a really basic thing. There's like a subreddit for you to look at other people's 3D donuts that they're making for the first time in Blender. And you can comment and get feedback on your donuts if that's the kind of thing you're interested in. Like the donut tutorial is just, I'm surprised nobody else has brought it up yet. It's incredible. I did it like maybe 5 times before moving on to anything else, just because I wanted to have a really strong idea about what to do with Blender. And from there you can split off to like other tutorials and other programs, because a lot of the skills are transferable. It's just a different kind of muscle memory. Blender's camera in particular moves differently to the camera in just about every other 3D software, which was a bit of a challenge. Like if I want to move into Houdini or something like that, I would have to learn an entirely new system of how to move a camera. But also Houdini has really good volumetrics that I might want to be using in the future. So being able to move between those two programs would be a huge boon for me. And if I get more practice in Houdini, I can start using the things that I know in Blender more easily, such as node networks and the fundamentals of modeling and how to do stuff. Insofar as other 3D fundamentals, I think a very basic and understated part of 3D art and animation, at least in my experience as someone who works in visual effects and inserting 3D assets into other footage or images, is studying how physical cameras work, like real camera movement in movies and in TV shows and animation, and even like the physical machinations going on within the camera, stuff like how the light goes through the lenses and how the pixel space is divided up on a monitor, and how color spaces work, I think is really important in terms of figuring out, for starters, if you want to be a good VFX artist, like, you know, being able to recreate as accurately as possible what it would look like if this thing was physically there on set is important. And also, to an extent, being able to play with that a little bit is also really cool. If you ever watch those I'm a huge fan of these video games by Arc System Works, with Dragon Ball Fighter Z or Guilty Gear XR, something like that. Like, they have these really insane models that they have like 4 or 5 for each character or something like that. And if you ever watch videos where people will mod the game to break the camera away from where it's supposed to be, you can use those to get a lot of really cool insights as to how they get their animation to look so good. Where like they'll thicken some lines, or they'll pull the camera back, but they'll increase the field of vision so that, you know, it can it'll compress more within the frame, and then you can tell that it's doing that because, you know, the outlines will get bigger, or certain parts of the anatomy of the character will change. Like, just studying stuff like that, like do some one-to-one recreations with models that you have to figure out how to get things to look the way that you want them, and pull off some really cool stylistic stuff. That's really good practice, and I think it's a big part as to how a lot of 3D stuff looks so good. With Blender in particular, there's a lot of focus from communities about making stuff that's photorealistic. But if you're a cat artist, you probably don't want to make stuff photorealistic, because I don't think anybody wants the big Warrior Cats movie that everybody's been talking about for years now to be this, you know, Lion King remake kind of thing. And
no, we
being
want
able
the
to
Stef beautiful ArtStation cats.
Absolutely, yeah. If you want to be able to recreate that kind of stylized animated look, camera work goes a lot into it, and composition as well. So yeah, that's where I would start insofar as Blender and how to do 3D stuff and get good at it.
No, perfect. Thank you so much. That was a really good answer, everybody. All right, no, speaking of Stef's beautiful cat art, which I've sent to everyone that I know, by the way, Stef, I'm sorry.
Oh,
It's so cute!
oh, thank you.
I mean, obviously, I think we're getting close to the end of my question sheet right now, but the last one I'd like to ask is a fun one, and it's sort of, what is your favorite thing about working in 3D? And could you maybe tell me what your favorite thing to model and make is?
I think it's kind of odd because, like, my favorite part about 3D is kind of how difficult it is at times. I really enjoy the challenges it brings, and because while it can be hard, it can be frustrating. Getting over those technical and artistic hurdles is so satisfying. And I like that there's always something new to learn. And even if I spend like 3 hours trying to figure something out that could have taken me 2 minutes had I known exactly what to do, I'm still like, yeah, I'm never going to do that again.
Yeah.
So it's rewarding that way. I enjoy the learning process of it.
Okay.
And of course, the whole spinning the model around for ages after you finish something, that is definitely that's a good part.
And you put physics on it and it like flaps.
Oh, it wiggles. So good.
And what would you say your favorite thing to model is?
Ooh, I like modeling monsters.
Ooh.
With like some kind of, like, I guess, a nice line between realistic and toony. So like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. So I used to like stylized stuff. It's kind of all I model, but I do like being able to model a couple more finer details in there. Like if it's got something gross about it, I enjoy modeling the gross details of a monster. That's always really fun.
I suppose now I'm just talking about fun video game models. Could you think of like one that you've seen in something recently and you're like, I love that model. That is a nicely made thing.
Oh, like some of them are just the monsters in Borderlands 3.
Yeah.
Some of the aliens, pretty. I love it.
All right, Jack, how about you?
Okay. Spinning the thing around when it's made is really satisfying. I love doing that. It's usually my favorite thing about 3D art. The thing that brings you the most satisfaction is storytelling, I think. And there's so much scope to do that with environments. Sometimes the story is just like, this is a bathroom. But you can tell an interesting thing with that, especially if there's a nice sort of design treatment to it. It's like, this is an ornate bathroom in an old Victorian tenement. And sometimes the story is that, and you can get really involved there. Like, what kind of person would live here? What would they do with the space? Would they keep it well? Would they keep it? And then it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And I love that kind of stuff. I just get lost in it. That's me anyway. My favorite thing. I think my favorite thing to model, kind of similar to that, is just old stuff. Anything old, sort of a bit broken. I used to love painting wood, and that's kind of translated now into 3D art as well. Now I like to sculpt wood. It's really fun. The older, more damp and water damage, the better. Just because it's got so much character. Wood is one of the best things ever. I could go on, but I could do another panel about this, about why I like wood so much.
Why Jack likes wood.
Yeah.
Why does it always come back to this with you?
Which is also the name of a different panel I could do about a very different topic.
Your answer kind of reminded me of... it's the team who worked on the Miraculous Ladybug cartoon. And Stef, you might be kind of... you're cat ether, you might understand what I'm talking about. And I think it was the director, and he was talking about what the benefits of making that cartoon in 3D was because it meant that you could do whatever you wanted with the camera. Which I think Miraculous Ladybug isn't... like, the models are... I mean, they're quite detailed, but then it's not like a photorealistic, beautifully done Pixar animation, you know? But it really does make the best use it can with its camera, which I think is something that 3D has, which 2D doesn't, is because you've already made the character, you can essentially shoot it from any angle like it's a live subject, without having to draw every single background from every single angle possible. Or frame by frame, like cinematic shots where the camera rotates around it. In 3D, you can just put that camera on a path and set it going, and it'll do it all for you. So I think...
because you can just try shots out as well. We can't really do that in 2D.
No.
It's like, you kind of have to decide on that and then do the work, versus 3D where you can, like, mess around a bit more.
Sort of, I think it... so although I think it probably has a steeper learning curve once you've got to the point where you have made your desk with the donut on it, you can set up some really cool stuff without having to redraw that desk and donut every single time you want it to change in like a little way. So I think that's something that's really, really interesting about 3D.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because I guess everything you would learn making the donut, you would be able to apply to your next models that you're making. So I guess think of everything as the donut. Everything is a donut in its own way.
You know, everything is a donut in its own way. Spencer, how about you? What is your favorite thing about working in 3D as both a medium and also to like just make a thing?
I'm going to echo Stef's answer. I really love the Professor Layton style, puzzle solving comorbid with working with weird 3D stuff. And I think it's just like crazy fun to go on an absolute tear with that one thing that you just worked out. Like you've, spoken to the great guru of Namek, and he's unlocked your true potential. Like as soon as you make like a cool shader and you're like, oh my God, what else can I apply this to? Or like you have that one idea that just completely breaks this mental heuristic that you've been reinforcing in your mind. It's incredible. Like, oh man, I can take this 2D smoke generation and composite it on top of footage and then use it as reference for a displacement map applied to a chromatic aberration effect to accurately recreate the physical processes of the Schlieren visualization while also recreating the look. Like, when you go on a tear like that, it's so fun. And being able to just think about and imagine the stuff you can do with this new technique that you've just figured out is really freeing and enjoyable. There's a catharsis there that's extremely powerful, and it's worth... It's like a million needles of fun being... Oh, why did I just say needles? It's like
what?
It's like the... I don't know. It's like your a whole bunch of serotonin is being released in your brain, and for some reason there's something inhibiting the neuroreceptors, so you can't pick them up. It's addicting to an extent. And yeah, it just, I like puzzles. It's fun.
Some million needles are fun.
I don't look.
Sorry.
Well, yeah.
No, that is a beautiful answer. Yeah. So, what would you say? Like, what is it that you're like? You know what I want to do more of? This thing.
I really enjoy modeling rocks. Because there's no like one way that a rock can look, and you can just basically do whatever you want, and then slap a stone texture on something and call it a rock. You can do a face, and if the face doesn't turn out quite the way you like it, you can just kind of smudge it a little bit, put a rock texture on it, and say it's a rock that looks like a face. And people will be like, "Whoa, that's so cool! You made a rock that looks like a face." And I'm like, "Yeah." And like just it's just a fun thing you can do on your own while messing around. It's a lot more fun than donuts because you don't have to think about, where the sprinkles are going to go and making a bunch of different things. Like if I have a spare like 5 minutes and I'm not doing anything, sometimes I'll just open up Blender and I'll make a rock. And I'll say, this is a good rock. This is a low poly rock. Look at all those polygons.
Sick low poly rock. Because I obviously, like, we've talked a lot about AAA 3D models, but is there anything that you can think of that comes to mind that you're like, this looks really neat, and it's not necessarily like super high quality textured ZBrush model character modeling? Like, could you think of something that's in a style that's like a little simpler but still looks good?
I'm a sucker for any 3D that recreates 2D, and in a lot of cases you can get away with that with like suspiciously few polygons if you're just like careful about how you stretch it in reference to where the camera is. I think that low poly in general is something that doesn't get used often enough. I understand that it's coming back because like the 20-year culture cycle, which is good because we do need more of it. And I sure hope it doesn't become like the annoying new trend, what happens with music. But also, low poly is just a good place to start because there's a lot less that you can screw up with, And if you do screw up, you can start over. What are you gonna do? Or go back a few steps, and it's usually fine. I think low poly is a really good aesthetic to start out with, and it's got some very strong features of its own that are pretty easy to work with for a beginner, at least.
No, I think that's definitely true. Like, I'm trying to think of like some examples because I think Kind Words, the Steam game that came out, was it last year? That's low poly.
Frog Detective.
Oh, there's so many indie. If it's indie or if it's a mobile game, it's probably low poly. And I think the more time passes, the better people are getting at stylizing how stuff looks. And the way it interacts with light and things, and I think there's something very satisfying about that. So I think, honestly, once you get past the initial hurdle, you can make something. If you aim for something low poly, you can make something that looks pretty stylish and pretty good pretty quickly. And something really delightful.
Have you seen Blender Grease Pencil?
No.
Oh yeah! Oh my God! Grease Pencil is incredible.
What is Blender Grease Pencil?
Blender Grease Pencil is essentially drawing on top of your thing in 2D in 3D. So
I have seen that. Someone did it with that seagull the other day. I'll see if I can find the tweet, but no.
Yeah. So the tweet you're talking about, I saw that too.
It's
I think I liked it.
Grease Pencil is also really cool because if you're careful about how you use it, you can interpolate new frames too, and you can kind of fiddle around with them in like edit modes and stuff like that, so that you don't actually have to completely redraw stuff. You can make it look as fluid or as not fluid as you want each time. If you guys ever watch Big Top Burger, that has like a whole bunch of Grease Pencil. They use Grease Pencil for the faces and the outlines, I think, and for a lot of animation smears. It's Grease Pencil. You can just assign like different brushes to it, just like you would any other thing. There's opacity and there's line thickness, and it's just it's honestly just a really good drawing tool. I would probably use it if Clip Studio Paint wasn't so incredible at everything else. I would use Grease Pencil full time. I definitely use it for all my 3D stuff.
It's beautiful. I'm so glad that we remembered to talk about that because
so good.
It's so cool. There's so much, and like then it's done. You like it.
I just want to echo something that you said earlier, Spencer, which is just like, about the learning and the higher you get. like learning never stops ever. I mean, like today even, I learned how to do something new, and it was really frustrating, and I quit halfway through and went to ArtStation to see if I could just buy the thing that I wanted to do, and then I was like, no, you probably learn to do it, and then I ended up cracking it, and it felt really great. And the thing is that honestly, just it doesn't ever stop. You will always be learning. It's a lifelong skill.
Thank you. All right, I think I'm ready. I think that is it for me. Is there anything you guys would like to say to young people or beginners just starting out as like a you can do it kind of encouraging thing? And also, if you guys you have anything that you want to plug for yourselves, like where can they follow you? Spencer, I know that you run a now 100+ person Discord server about getting into 3D, because one of our mods for CATMEET joined it the other day and was like, I'm number 100. So yeah, is there anything you'd like to say before we go? Anything we've forgotten? Yeah, be my guest.
Try and be inspiring, but 3D is hard. Things are ugly for a long time, but eventually it will be good if you stick with it. As good as that gets. I don't really have anything to plug. I'm CynicalPlant everywhere. If you wanna see some 3D cats, you can see them there.
Will there be more 3D cats?
Absolutely. I've got like some in progress right now.
Who can you give us a hint at who the next 3D cat will be?
Star.
Oh,
I really liked like the original series, so
yeah.
a lot of old cats coming
the
back.
classics. Beautiful. No, they're so beautiful. One day I'd like to see them, because I think you do a bit of 3D printing, I think.
Oh, I've started on that journey. That's what my YouTube's for mainly. So I've got one of those in the works as well. Just
oh my god,
stuff in the works all the time.
No, I totally have not stared at your Instagram about looking. I was on the hunt for 3D cat to look. But no, they're beautiful. Thank you. Jack, how about you?
Yeah, just keep going. That's my thing. Just keep going. It will be frustrating for a while, and there will be a point, and I think it comes with all art things, right? Where you're just like, I'm terrible at this, and everyone else is brilliant. And honestly, that never really goes away. I think I still feel like I'm terrible and everyone else is brilliant. So just keep going through that kind of stuff. And you can follow me on Twitter if you want any advice. And you can just DM me. I know that sounds super intimidating, probably, but honestly, I really don't mind.
He's a really nice and wise boy. I can recommend. And Spencer, I'm sure you've got stuff to plug that is both cat related and 3D related.
This is true. So first of all, I would like to say, as my inspiring words, the juice is absolutely worth the squeeze. I've been into 3D for like not very long now, and I've already been able to make things that I never thought I could make in a million years. I used to psych myself out of it for a really long time I would tell myself, my brain is not built for 3D. It does not work in that dimension. Just stick with 2D stuff. You're fine at it. But frankly, I have now, as of like a little while ago, been able to make stuff that I never thought I would be able to make in my wildest dreams, and now my dreams are that much wilder. Insofar as stuff I can plug, there's a really cool Warrior Cats Discord server that's focused all around modeling and doing animations for 3D cats. We're starting out some multi-animator projects in a little bit. Once all the mod team has a little bit more time on their side, we're called Warriors Power of 3D, and you can probably find a link to us somewhere.
It's such a cute pun. Oh my god.
Oh god, yeah. And insofar as stuff that I personally do, I run a Warrior Cats community recap podcast where every 2 weeks every week I have an episode with a member of the community, and we go through one of the books. Currently, we're on The New Prophecy, and it's pretty good. It's called Four Trees, and you can find it basically anywhere you can find me. I'm SpencerGrantV on Twitter and just around everywhere else. So give us a follow. You could be like our 8th listener or something like that. I think we're up to 8 now. Yeah. It's fun.
Perfect. All right, thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your Sunday to have this chat with me. I really appreciate it. I will be putting all of your links to stuff in the description down below. And yeah, thank you so much. Honestly, it's been really interesting. Honestly, I find 3D a little intimidating, but talking to you guys has kind of made me want to be like, maybe I could dip my toes in Blender a little bit and make something pretty.
Yeah, you definitely could.
All right, no, thank you so much. It's been lovely to speak with you.
Yeah, same. Yeah, it's a
Thank
pleasure.
you for having us.
Yeah.
It's been a delight.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you so much for listening to this panel. I hope you had fun and maybe learned something new. And I want to say again, thank you so much for everyone involved. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to make something cool. As part of our CATMEET 2020 celebrations this year, we're raising money for Special Effect. Special Effect is a charity which helps people with physical disabilities play video games. You can find out more about it and even donate by heading over to our Just Giving page. That's justgiving.com/CATMEET 2020. Or if you want to look really cool and support a good cause, we're also selling merch of our beautiful mascot, drawn by Rootcroft, over on Twitter. These are only going to be up on my Redbubble until December 1st, so they are limited edition CATMEET 2020 merch, and also all of the profits from them will be donated to Special Effect. If you've made it through this far, and you have absolutely no idea what's going on, you don't know what CATMEET is, you can find out more by heading to our Linktree site at catmeet2020.card.co. And if you want to join in the fun yourself, we've got a whole bunch of events running this weekend. Please head over and join our Discord. I'll put the links to that and everything I've mentioned in the description down below. Thanks, bye!